Hey brewers, so today I'm going to take you through some of my favorite upgrades and modifications for the Grainfather G30, like the one you see behind me. Make sure you hang around for the last one because it's going to be a game changer for your brewing experience. So let's go! As somebody who's brewed on all types of systems, I have to say all-in-ones are my favorite. Brewing on these systems is awesome. I'm rocking a G70 these days, but I did keep my G30 around to use as a sparge heater. But before all that, I made lots of modifications. And these are going to be mods that will make your day easier. That's because the first two versions of the G30 did have some drawbacks, although they were great systems overall. So in order to fix those things, we had to do some extra stuff. If you have the G30 version 3, some of these might not apply to you as much. This is really geared towards the version 1 and version 2, and bringing them as close to the quality and operation that the version 3 offers, without actually buying the version 3. So the first mod, and this is a really good one, it's the GCAST Wi-Fi bridge. One of the limitations to the G30 version 1 and version 2 is that they really only work through a Bluetooth connection. Yes, you can use it locally with the control panel on the unit, but what if you want to view the brew on your phone and interact with it that way? This was all good and great until I wanted to walk away more than 30 feet or so. And then I noticed my connection was dropping because Bluetooth just can't go that far. So I found this bridge, and this is sold by Grainfather. It's about $89, and all you have to do is plug it in near the G30, make sure it's on, and then set it up in the app. It's pretty easy to do. And all it's doing is connecting the Grainfather to the bridge via Bluetooth, whereas the bridge connects itself to your wireless router. So say you're mashing, for instance, and you realize, hey, my yeast is way out of date, or the starter didn't take. There's little to no reproduction happening. Maybe you gotta pick up a kid from school, or maybe you heard the ice cream truck jingle and now you want a Choco Taco. I don't know, whatever it might be. This is going to have you covered because it'll work anywhere there's a Wi-Fi connection or a 4G or 5G connection for your phone. Okay, so this next one made a lot of things really possible for me. I'm talking about the micro Pipework for the G30. This is going to let you make as little as 2.6 gallon batches in your G30 and use as little as 4.4 pounds of grain. So for all you out there who might make low ABV beers, small batches, or even low carb beers, this is great. So using the micro Pipework is really easy. It's no different than connecting the normal Pipework. So you're going to take the micro Pipework and just screw it onto the bottom mash plate. I will say that if you're going to use more than 7 to 7.5 pounds of grain, you're really getting close to the point where you might want to consider just using the normal Pipework, because if you use the micro Pipework and the mash exceeds the volume that can handle, you're going to just get grain pouring through the middle, which is not great. It can clog your pump. You might be wondering at this point, why can't I just use the regular Pipework for small batches? Well, you can, but efficiency is going to suffer a lot. Okay, so next is the plant Dolly. If you're not already using a stand for your Grainfather, a plant Dolly is going to save you a bunch of headaches. The first headache you're going to save here would be the Grainfather tripping its breaker. The problem is the reset switch is right in the middle of the unit on the bottom. So if you got a full mash tun or you're boiling, you're not getting anywhere near that. This is where the Dolly comes in. So not only can you wheel around the G30 while it's full of grain, water, whatever, you can also reset that switch very easy. And this has happened to me several times. It is something that you need to worry about. And then of course the bonus is that you can wheel this thing now around your whole brewery for chilling, sparging, whatever you might need to do. Okay, so next up is a custom brew stand for the G30. When I built mine, this was a really big deal for my brewery process and everything. It made everything a lot easier for me. It also helped me cut down on some equipment I didn't need to use anymore, such as a pump for sparging. I will definitely say that creating a stand was also important for making my brew days easier and compacting the brew area when I wasn't using it. That's because you can hang different things like your mash paddle, the glass lid for the G30, whichever Pipework you might not be using at the moment, maybe some gloves, whatever you have. And keep in mind that 3D printer is a great thing to have around because there are tons of prints available for the Grainfather. So my custom brew stand had 3 shelves. And on the bottom shelf is where the G30 would go. But what really made this stand work was that the bottom shelf for the G30 had heavy duty rails so it would pull out and had a heavy duty caster on the front of it in addition to the 4 others for stability and could support a full mash. And then when you're done with the brew day and you've cleaned everything up, you can push it right back in and store your G30 there. The second shelf was for the Counterflow chiller, and I just ended up using the extra space mostly for odds and ends or maybe hop additions, things like that. The top shelf was for the sparge heater. And this is where it really saved me some time and money. I could just put my sparge heater up there. And when I was ready to sparge, I could use gravity feed instead of using a pump. It's worth noting I've repurposed mine at this point. I don't really use the G30 to brew on every day anymore. Most of the time I'm using my G70, which I'm able to do 6-gallon batches on. So I have no reason to use the G30, except as a sparge heater. So I dismantled this stand, and now all that remains is the bottom shelf and the back part of the stand, which I use to kind of wheel it around. So it's become a massive roll around stand for my G70 at this point. So this was kind of a big one, and this is really important if you use a lot of hops. I'm talking, of course, about a false bottom. I like hops, and I like to whirlpool a lot. And when you whirlpool, you're usually talking about a pretty good amount of hop material. And if you're using the stock filter that comes with the G30, it usually does okay, but I found that I was getting an extremely slow trickle by the end of the boil because of all that hop matter and all that trub just clogging up the pump. This is where the false bottom came in. So this particular false bottom was the one and only one I could find that would fit. I believe it's for a robo brew, but it has the same dimensions as a G30. I picked this up at Williams Brewing, and it wasn't that expensive. The only thing to note here is that the false bottom is pretty light. It doesn't stay in place very well. So if you have a really hard rolling boil or you're stirring like crazy, this thing might lift up a bit, which has happened to me. And most of the time, admittedly, most of the hop material still finds its way just on top of the false bottom. So it still helps reduce the amount of trub and everything that's going through the pump. Now, if you've used the G30 stock plates for mashing, you already know where I'm headed with this. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. The stock plates are awful. They aren't thick at all. I feel like I could use them for like emergency wrapping paper or something. Okay, so maybe it's not quite that bad, but I never really trusted the plates fully. When lifting the basket to sparge, I always had it in the back of my mind, this feels like it's going to just fall right through and ruin the whole beer because now my boil is full of grain and it's gonna clog everything up. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is those freaking seals that go around the plates, and you somehow have to slide the plates and the seals together into the grain pipe without the seals coming off. This is way easier said than done. Yes, you can totally use Star Sand to sort of lubricate the inside of the malt pipe and the seals and get them to go in easier, but that's still another step in addition to putting the seals on in the first place, cleaning those seals. It's just more work than it's worth. So my solution, I found some rolled plates, and these are made by Grainfather. So it seems like they kind of know that they messed up when it came to these seals, because to be honest, I believe the G30 should have come with rolled plates in the first place. But you can buy these, and they're very strong. I have no concerns about malt falling through the same way I do with the stock ones. And the kicker is they don't require seals. You just drop the bottom one in place after putting the pipework on it, mash in, and then drop the other one on top. That's all there is to it. It's definitely one of the best upgrades I ever made for this system. All right, so now we're gonna talk about the grain coat. You can see I've got a grain coat on the G30 behind me, and it was one of the first upgrades I ever made. This is gonna help you get boiling faster, hold your mash temps more efficiently, and it's definitely gonna add some visual appeal as well. Because this is an insulating jacket, and it means that the kettle will have to work less hard to hold the mash temperature and get to boil, you're saving on electricity. You're also saving your fingers and maybe family or friends who might accidentally touch the outside of the kettle. And while yes, the jacket will still be pretty hot, it's not gonna be scalding hot. So I bought this because I was living in the Northeast United States, where we saw negative temperatures in Fahrenheit pretty often during the winter, and I was still able to brew in my unheated garage. Okay, so the grain overflow filter is next. This little mesh filter sits on top of your mash plate and prevents grain from going down the pipework. If any grain went down the pipework, it would end up in your wort. Now, you guys already know I don't worry about grain causing tannin extraction when it gets into the boil. That's not a thing. If it were, decoctions wouldn't work and we wouldn't use them. That's because you're effectively boiling the grain when you do a decoction. So no, I'm actually worried about clogging the pump. If grain accumulates in the recirculation pipe or the pump, we're in pretty big trouble when we need to chill or circulate. That could also add some points for bacteria to accumulate and infect your beer as it cools on the way out, depending on how you chill. So this little filter was a cheap upgrade that gave me some peace of mind. The other thing I did here was remove the safety features in my valve on the recirculation pipe. And this is on you if you decide to do it. I take no responsibility for it because the safety features ensure that if the valve is open and there is no hose connected to the recirculation pipe, it will just not be able to pump. Once you take this feature away, and you forget to turn off that valve, and then you hit the pump, you're gonna have boiling wort everywhere. Okay, so this is my final and definitely my favorite mod for the G30, and that's quick disconnects on the recirculation pipe. With the stock connections on the G30 recirc pipe, I was always having to use two hands to unscrew the connection, which is not great, but I also found that a little bit of wort would always be trickling on the floor every time I tried to change these connections. Not a huge deal, but it would always get inside my grain coat, it would get all over the pump, it wasn't really a good time. So with quick disconnects, we're talking about one-handed operation, and ideally no wort leakage either. A bonus is that by installing a quick disconnect on your G30, you now open up your world to using all sorts of attachments like whirlpool arms. The particular setup I use for my quick disconnects came from a Reddit post, which I'll definitely link in the description if you want to dig into it a little more. So feel free to check them out. So again, it's worth noting that the G30 Gen 3 has come out and addresses some of these issues. But if you have the Gen 1 or Gen 2 like I do, and you just don't want to spend the money on a whole new system right now, consider these upgrades and modifications I talked about. They should get you pretty close to the quality and performance that the third generation offers. So there you have it. Those are my absolute favorite mods and add-ons for the G30. If you found this helpful, please don't forget to hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments if you have mods that you've done or maybe some you're considering in the future. See you in the next one, and never stop learning.